Alright class, the last 5 problems in our notes for today on lesson 5.2, simplifying polynomials, are going to be simplifying using multiplication. So for this first one, number 4, we have a monomial of 2x cubed times a trinomial of 7x squared minus 3x plus 5. So our strategy for multiplying this is going to be using the distributive property. The 2x cubed is going to be multiplied by each term in this trinomial. So we have the first term of 7x squared times 2x cubed. 7 times 2 is 14. X cubed times x squared is x to the 5th. Now we move on to the second term. 2x cubed times a negative 3x. 2 times a negative 3 is a negative 6. And x cubed times x is x to the 4th. Remember, class, when we have common bases here and here, all we do is we add their exponents. So that's how I got the 3 plus the 2 gives this 5. And I have the 3 plus x to the first giving us this 4. And then the last term, we have 2x cubed times the positive 5. 2 times 5 is 10, and then the x cubed comes along with it. So there's my answer as I distribute the 2x cubed. Number 5, I'm sure you've seen this so many times before. In intermediate algebra, we do factoring and foiling in every chapter that we do. I'm sure you guys are almost sick of factoring and foiling by now, but they are definitely important skills, as you're going to find as we go into chapter 7 and chapter 6 coming up. So we have a binomial times a binomial. As you guys know, you probably think of the 4-letter word FOIL, F-O-I-L. So we have the first times the first, the outside times the outside, the inside times the inside, and the last times the last. That's where the letters F-O-I-L come from in the word FOIL. So first times first, 3x multiplied by 5x is 15x squared. Then we have our outside term of 3x times a positive 4, making a positive 12x. Our inside terms of 2 times 5x, giving us 10x. And then the last term, 2 times 4 is 8. So from here, just make sure that you clean up anything, meaning combine like terms. And as you guys, I'm sure, have seen by now, the 12x and the 10x, those can be combined to make 22x. So for our final answer, we have 15x squared plus 22x plus 8. And this is the correct answer for number 5. On to number 6. Number 6, we have a trinomial times a binomial. This is where it gets significantly more difficult, and I shouldn't say more difficult, but it certainly gets significantly more, what's the word I'm looking for? It definitely takes a longer time to do these type of problems, just because it's a lot more multiplying to do. The strategy here is going to be taking each term in the trinomial times everything in the binomial. So we have x squared times x plus 4. We're going to have x to the 6th times x plus 4. And we're going to have a negative 2 times x plus 4. So I can see how all this mess up here is kind of making it look confusing. Let's try to break this down a little bit so we could better understand this. This x squared, we're going to multiply it by the binomial of x plus 4. So x squared times x plus 4. Now that's not the only thing we're going to multiply by x plus 4. We're also going to multiply this 6x times x plus 4. So plus 6x multiplied by x plus 4. That's not all. We have this last term of the trinomial of negative 2. That is also going to be multiplied by x plus 4. So hopefully that makes sense to you. Each and every one of these terms is going to be multiplied by the binomial x plus 4. So we're going to use the distributive property to multiply all these, and then at the end, we're going to combine like terms, and that will be our final answer. So there's our strategy. So let's multiply. X squared times x is x cubed. X squared times 4 is a positive 4x squared. Next one, 6x times x is a positive 6x squared. 6x times a positive 4 is a positive 24x. Last one, a negative 2 times x is a negative 2x, and a negative 2 times 4 is a negative 8. So now that we got this big, huge mess up here, let's clean it up by combining like terms. So we'll start off with our x cubes. We have 1x cubed. Moving on to our x squared terms. We have 4x squared plus 6x squared, making 10x squared. That takes care of that term, and that takes care of that term. We have 2x to the first terms, or x terms. 24x minus 2x gives us a positive 22x. And then our last term is the constant term of a negative 8. So the hardest part of this one is understanding our strategy when we multiply a trinomial times a binomial. Make sure that each term in the trinomial is multiplied by each term in the binomial. Number 7. This one we're going to divide up into a couple different steps. Our order of operations say that we have to multiply before we add or subtract. So I'm going to multiply these two. I'm going to multiply these two, and then at the end I'm going to combine like terms. So for this green section up here, we're going to multiply a binomial times a binomial using the FOIL method. X times x is x squared. Outside is a negative 5x. Inside is a negative 2x. And last is a negative 10. So I have successfully FOILed that green section of problem number 7. Now we're going to multiply the red section specifically using the distributive property. So the negative 3x times x is a negative 3x squared, and a negative 3x times 6 is a negative 18x. Now that we've successfully multiplied everything, let's now finish up by combining like terms. So let's get all of our x squareds together. Here we have 1x squared. Here we have a negative 3x squared, making a negative 2x squared. That takes care of our squared terms. Let's go on to our x to the first terms. 5x minus 2x makes a negative 7x, and we have more x's over here of a negative 18, so a negative 7 minus 18 is a negative 25x. And that takes care of our x terms. And then we have our constant terms, just a negative 10. So my answer, a negative 2x squared minus 25x minus 10. Ah! In my key I have this should be a positive 10. Stink! A negative 2 times a negative 5 is a positive 10. So that should be positive, and that should be positive. A negative 2x squared minus 25x plus 10. I hate it when I make mistakes. Stink. Last one, number 8. Once again, very similar to number 7, we have a monomial times a binomial. Distribute that. And then we have 2 binomials multiplied by each other. We're going to FOIL that, and then we're going to subtract those two. So here we have our green section as being 8x squared plus 8x. We're subtracting. Now this is where it becomes a little bit tricky, class. I like to FOIL using positive numbers right here. So I'm just going to subtract this whole quantity right here after I'm done FOILing it. So that's why I'm going to have the subtraction sign. I'm going to put a parenthesis right here telling me that I'm going to have to distribute that negative sign at the end. So let's FOIL this red part. X multiplied by x is x squared. Here we would have a positive 6x. Now follow me here, class. I hope we can do this all in one step. Here we have a positive 6x, and here we have a positive 3x, making a positive 9x for my O and my I term, my outside and my inside in the FOIL part. And then the last, we have 3 times 6, making 18. Now, we have 8x squared plus 8x, subtract that trinomial. So when we subtract a trinomial, we have to distribute a negative 1. So let's write one more line before we get our final answer. We have 8x squared plus 8x minus an x squared minus 9x minus 18. And finally, we can clean all this up and circle our answer and move on to our homework. We have 8x squared. We have 7x squared. Getting all of our like terms together, here's 8x squared, here's a negative 1x squared, making a positive 7x squared. A negative 8x, a positive 8x minus 9x is a negative 1x, or just a negative x. And lastly, we have our constant term of a negative 18. So my final answer, 7x squared minus x minus 18. And that concludes our lesson on multiplying, or on simplifying polynomials using multiplication. Our objectives for today's lesson are going to be objectives 36 through 40, and that will be our homework assignment, which you will do in class tomorrow.